In any case, when I was 21, I moved to Russia, and I'd been there a few months. It was the winter, and I was miserable and depressed, and thought I had made a pretty stupid decision. And we had some holiday coming up where I was working, and it was, I don't know, Great Fatherland Workers Memorial Day. And we had the Monday off, and I decided I would use it to get out of town and sort of revive my spirits a bit. And I was working with mainly Russians, and I asked if they had any advice on, sort of 3-day weekends, if Russians did that sort of thing. And this Dr. Slava from Siberia recommended this great place he knew, this great resort, as he called it, using the English word, outside of Moscow. And he gave me the phone number, and I called it up, and I said, by this time I'd asked some friends if they wanted to come with me, and there were 6 of us, and I asked if they had room for 6 people for the weekend, and the guy said, sure, come on by. He gave me the directions. We took an overnight train, got to this town called Smolensk in the morning, and no one was around, and all they had was the address, and gave it to a guy with a van and whose eyes got really wide, which I didn't understand, but only 3.5 hours later we were still in the van. Did I understand why, he was so excited to see 6 people who wanted to go essentially, 200 miles away and charge us $100 for it. In any case, we come up to this sort of dilapidated resort, if you could call it that, built sometime in the 1960s. And there's this drunken, toothless man whose voice sounds vaguely like the man I was talking to on the phone a few days before, who's sort of stumbling around in the entranceway, and the place looks really kind of not only decrepit but pretty empty, and he's kind of dangling this big key on a hook, and soon it becomes clear that in fact this wonderful resort that Slava recommended was a summer resort. And it's closed in the winter. But for 6 Americans, the proprietor would be happy to open it up for us. So he's there, stone drunk, with a big key, and he opens the place for us, and we enter, and it's pretty much The Shining. I mean, it's this 40-year-old resort with not a soul in it, and with wind sort of blowing through the the blown-out windows. And so whatever the drunk proprietor's name is, shows us to our rooms. I mean, we had our pick of the place. I like to think, I took the presidential suite in this crappy little, forgotten place. And then he says, okay, I'll see you all on Monday. This is sometime Friday morning. And, the grounds are nice enough. There's a forest, a bit of a pond, but, it gets to be close to dusk, and we realize we don't have any food. And there's not exactly a flourishing cafe scene at this place. But we did hear before the drunk guy left us here for 3 days that if we needed anything, there was a town over about a 20-minute walk. We could go to this town. He pointed in the direction. And so my friend and I, we decided that we'd like to take a walk, see some of the local flavor, and walk into town and buy some things. The town turned out to be just maybe half a dozen houses, and the address we had for the place where you could buy food turned out to be this 85-year-old woman's house. We rang the doorbell, and she led us into a side room where she had cans of dusty condensed milk and North Korean ramen noodles. And so we bought basically, the woman, this other moral of the story is just every person we greet on this trip is so pleased to see us because we bought this woman's entire supply of spoiled provisions from her, and we're walking back with everything we could carry, and as we're on the road back towards the hotel, my friend and I noticed this sort of weird shadow on the ground. It's one of these cases where every other time in my childhood you're walking through the dark and you see the shadow and you get all freaked out, and then you walk up closer to the shadow and you see it's just like a tree branch in the road or something, and you laugh at how stupid you were for being afraid of that tree branch. And so my friend and I both kind of notice it, and we don't really say anything to another. I think we're both thinking the same thing about, I'm not going to get freaked out about the tree branch. And we get a little bit closer, about as maybe close as I am to these speakers right here. And the tree branch gets up and starts screaming at us. And chasing us down the road. And we let out these real, perfect horror movie screams. Drop all the shit and just are running like, well, I've lost my friend now, and I'm in the woods, and I'm yelling out. Her name was Ami, Ami, and I hear Josh. So we find one another in the woods, and then realized that we ran away from the place where we were. Basically the monster was still between us and the place where we were staying. We'd run, away, but there was only one way back to where we were going, and so we sort of lock arms and start marching back down the road. And now the tree branch monster is back, passed out or whatever in the snow, and sort of we walk, to the side around it, and then sprint as far as we can. And then a truck comes pulling up behind us, and the guy must have taken us for some locals, just out for a late night North Korean ramen munchie run or something. So he comes up and he says, "Have you seen Ivan?" And I'm like, "Who's Ivan?" And he goes, "My idiot cousin, the local drunk, Ivan. Like, he went out, they went out for a bender. Where is he?" And I, first act a bit ignorant or just confused, and then we realized that, the tree branch monster was Ivan. So we tell him, I think he's back in the snow over there. He gives us a bit of a lecture about how when you encounter drunks in Russia, you must help them. What kind of manners did we have for not lifting him up? Oh, I'm about halfway through. Crap. Okay. Anyway, the second, we make it through the first night. The second night, a bunch of Russian ice fishermen come to this resort, and there was a few Russians with us, and their eyes sort of got dark and ominous when they saw the ice fishermen. I thought it was sort of novelty, because they knew what would happen that evening when the ice fishermen returned from fishing. What would happen is the ice fishermen would proceed to get completely plastered on homemade vodka and pig fat that they ate to chase it with, and they would chase us down. The Russian friends were smart, and they hid, actually, from the ice fishermen. And I thought it might be fun to chat with them. And chatting with them turned into sort of forcing glass after glass after glass of homemade vodka. And all of us foreigners, it was sort of like an Agatha Christie novel. Like, one after another would fall. I would go into the bathroom and puke and, pass out. And then, 10 minutes later, someone else would. Until there was, only one guy, this really tall, bulky guy named Lucas, who made it actually the whole night with the ice fishermen. And the next day was actually great. We went to the steam baths. They were too drunk to fish, or too hungover to fish. We went to the bathhouse, and they beat us with oak branches, and then we jumped in the frozen lake with them together. And the next morning, finally, and I guess one day later, back to door or whatever, and let us out. And overnight train back to Moscow, and that it dawned on me that when a pack of wild, I'd go out for a conversation. But I guess it also taught me something about what travel was, and that travel can be about seeing old in new ways in places you've been the whole time. So thank you.